Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Well, good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and today we are discussing resumes for lighting designers, concepts, winging it, and our annual Super Bowl halftime show review.
And this is David coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers. We're not the Luminoids. That's the whole band. The whole band's not here. Just
I
three
just like the
out
way
of the
it's, I
six.
like to add that oids to your thing.
Okay, well,
Brother, you said brother oids.
Brother-oids. Okay, anyway, we are the Lumen Brothers, and welcome to episode 148, or as we also call it, post-Super Bowl blues.
I can't wait till next year.
I've been promised that James Taylor will be the halftime show next year if he's still alive.
Oh, really? Is that
so
true?
Stan, you will be happy next year.
I would be.
Anyway,
James Taylor.
did you guys watch the Super Bowl yesterday?
Yes.
It wasn't too exciting. You know, I'm a Green Bay Packer fan.
I didn't watch the
know.
game. I just watched the halftime show. I was in tech. Give me a break.
You want to hear something really depressing? I invited my entire faculty staff for a Super Bowl party at my house.
Can they fit in your house?
I didn't have to worry about it. Only one person showed up. And thank you, Ezra, for showing up. We had a great time.
That's sad, David. My whole street was clogged up when I got home from tech. It was like, where do these cars come from? I couldn't get in my driveway.
So let's get started. Steve has our first question.
Yes, it comes from Greta in Wisconsin. And she writes, my teacher says I need to get my resume down to one page. So what is in and what is out? Well, Greta, there are two types of resumes. There is a CV, and that is kind of a collection of everything you've done. And that's probably the resume that you feel you want to write. The resume you need to write, though, is what your teacher says. A one-page resume, that's what a director wants to see. And that one page is simply a short history of what you've done. If you're in college right now, then you're probably weeding out some of your high school credits. If you're in graduate school, then maybe you're weeding out some of your undergraduate credits. But that one-page resume, just the facts. We need your name and contact information. We need your design experience, maybe some technical experience. Sometimes people put skills in there, but I don't know about that because everyone always says, I know how to use Microsoft Word. Who on the planet doesn't? And we need some educational experience. Where did you get your bachelor's? Are you about to get your master's? And finally, some references. And if you have those references on there, be sure that you talk to them and tell them you're putting them on your resume. And I would not, ask them how they want to be contacted. Do they want to be contacted by phone, or do they want to be contacted by email? And then that's pretty important. So I don't know. What do you guys advise on this one-page resume?
I think you hit all the big points there, Steve. I don't think I could think of maybe as a logo, maybe sort of a branding of yourself. Be conscious about the font that you choose. Make sure that the font's not too small so people can read it. Something that I learned recently, this sort of a little trick. I don't know if I said it on this show before, but kerning. You can go into Microsoft Word, into advanced tab and fonts, and you can make the spacing between the letters a little bit wider, which makes it easier to read. And I found that to be really helpful for me on documents that I put together. So look up kerning, Kearning, for your resume.
Yeah, one point I want to make is that your resume should change depending on what job you're applying for. And it needs to be focused in on whatever job that is. For instance, some of you may be designer programmers. And if the job is for a summer job for a lighting programmer, you may not necessarily want all your design work on there. You may want to focus on the programming and also say that you are also a designer so that they know it, but that they realize that you're primarily fit for that job. You should also put all your skills on there as far as, again, aimed for that particular job. The lighting consoles that you're proficient in, shows that you programmed on, big shows, small shows, things like that. Also, if you're looking for a design job, make sure you list all the shows you've designed or assisted on with the name of the director. Make sure the name of the director's on there too, because most directors and artistic directors who are looking for a lighting designer, or if you're a lighting designer, you're looking for an assistant, they'll see the name of the director or lighting designer on there and they will call them. Say, hey, what was Julie like as an assistant or as a designer? And the director say, yeah, she was fantastic. And that really is how people find jobs. And getting to what Steve was talking about with references, those points are great, but make sure you ask. Don't ever assume a reference because A, it may not be a good reference, and B, it's kind of rude. So you always want to ask, hey, David, is it all right if I use you as a reference on my resume? And 99% of the time, they're going to say, absolutely, no problem, okay? Scooter in Louisiana. Scooter, have you ever known anyone named Scooter?
No.
Isn't Scooter like a 50s name? I like Scooter. Don't get me wrong. I think it's coming back.
Oh, Scooter Libby.
Scooter Libby.
Scooter Libby, who worked for George Bush. I didn't know him, but I know of him.
Yeah, yes, there's a Scooter. So anyway, Scooter in Louisiana says, I am struggling with the idea of concept. Throw me a bone. How does concept work? Well, concept was a term that was used quite handily during the 70s by a fantastic lighting designer and teacher, John Gleason. And I know John wrote about this quite a bit. John used to teach at NYU, and he was one of the first professional lighting designers that I ever interned for. I was sort of like the third assistant, also known as the gopher. Get me coffee. So, John used to use the term concept a lot. Concept was always a loose term for me because I kind of have two terms for what John used to talk about. And one is called point of view, and the other term is called approach. And you put those together, and I believe you have the show concept. The point of view, the way I teach it, is your personal connection to the show. Why is it important for you to do the show? What do you want the audience to get out of it? The approach is actually what you use in design to communicate that point of view to the audience. What do you think, Steve?
Joel Milsinger kind of destroyed concept for everybody. If you go back and you look at A Streetcar Named Desire, his concept for the set, his world, he summed it up in a few words, and he said, Blanche is a moth who thinks she's a butterfly. And if you look at what he came up with, this kind of gossamer gray, muted browns set, you could see that moth. Now, I don't think the audience, grabbed each other by the shoulder and said, oh my God, look at that. It's a moth on stage. But he had this kind of world that he was trying to create, this metaphor that he was trying to say. And he kind of ruined it for all of us because it was such a great visualization of what he wanted to do. Concept's a tricky one. I think what happens is people confuse location with concept. I'm going to do Romeo and Juliet in 1929 New York. Bang, and we're off to the races. And I don't think that's a concept. I think that's a location. Now, probably location is important inside your concept, but there has to be this overarching point of view that you're bringing to the show. And just to say I'm setting it in New York, I mean, what's that? That's a location. So concept's a difficult one to nail down. I think it gets back to why are we doing the show? Why is this play important? How are we presenting our unique view, our angle into the show? We're digging in, trying to find something that we're trying to emphasize and bring to the community. Also, I think mixed in with that concept is the timeliness of the play for the audience that you're presenting it to.
Yeah, and if I could expand on your example, Joe Melziner, the beauty of that particular concept, and John used to talk about this a lot, actually, this particular concept, and that is the whole idea of Blanche as a moth. That metaphor can actually transcend not only into the design, but into the acting as well. Because Blanche on stage would always pull away from light. She always liked it dark because she was an aging person. She did not want anyone to see the wrinkles on her face. And she felt that, she had this whole character that she was playing to try to impress other people. So she would always repel from the light. So a lot of that had to do with that, moth concept, which I thought was really interesting.
Well, Mitch has that line, "I've never really had a good look at you."
Right.
And it's I think that was something the whole team, as you say, as the director, the actor, everybody could land on and approach it from that point of view.
Yeah. And, and you're right. Who knows how effective it was to the average audience member, but it gave everyone directions. It really did. It really gave the actor a direction to take these characters. And when Stanley at the end, grabs the lamp and says, "Look at you, look at you, look at yourself." He's basically telling her to get real, come back to reality. You're not who you think you are.
Well, it gives you also a basis. It gives you a fence never to go outside of. You know what your territory is.
Yeah, the boundaries, exactly.
Yeah, I saw something years ago at the Public Theater, and I've forgotten what it was now, but I remember it struck me at how unified everything was. And I remember at one point, the thing that struck me was if they had had 4 chairs on stage, it would have really solved a directing acting problem. Mm-hmm. They had 3, and they didn't cheat. They didn't bring a 4th chair out to make it an easy kind of obvious fix. They used those 3 chairs to stay inside the vocabulary of their show and the world of the show, and it was that much better. It was things as simple as that. Don't cheat. Don't say you have a color palette of blue and yellow, and all of a sudden you throw in red because that was a convenient thing to throw in. Stay in your vocabulary.
I think you guys said a lot of good things, but I'm going to just be really a little bit contrarian here.
The contrarian comes out.
I'm going to give the contrarian view. And while you were talking, I did a little reading too. So I think that this word, I think, David, what you said about approach and point of view, those 2 things are quite valid, and I like them. And everything Steve said also. But I do think this is sort of, I didn't know Mr. Gleason, but I think it's a little bit elitist to use this word concept. It sounds mysterious. It sounds like, what do you mean? Like this, like the questioner is answering. If you look up what the meaning of the word is, if you use this word, it's a little bit less off-putting, I think. It's just an idea. Sometimes it's an abstract idea or a general notion or a theme. So if you say, what is the general theme of your production? You're all kind of saying that, you're dancing around it. But when you get to it's really a thematic choice. It could be visual. I love Steve's point about metaphors. I love metaphors. I think applying a metaphor to a production is great. And that can inspire a scenic design, a costume design, a lighting style, and so on. So I think I think hitching your wagon, so to speak, with an anchor for the production, and it's beyond the location, like Steve said, makes good sense. But when we use these sort of high-minded words that are sort of a little bit ambiguous and people don't know what you mean, I think it's helpful when we're talking about that kind of thing to use plain language, right? And concept sort of sounds a little bit, obscure, comes from, it's a plan, an interpretation, a conception, right? An idea, right? That's really what it is. And that can then define all the choices that you make going forward. You can compare a choice to your dearly held concept. So, it's worthy to have that, but it's an idea conceived in the mind. The original was meant to, says, the original meaning of the verb to conceive was to take sperm into the womb, okay? And the later extension of meaning to take an idea into the mind. So I think those are sort of simpler ways to get your head around what it's meaning, but we should be careful to sort of use language that creates obscurity and distance and too much abstraction where we don't know what we're talking about. But yeah, giving the production a central idea or theme, which then informs your choices, I think is terrific, and we should do that. And sometimes that's in the play itself. The playwright comes with that conception, and sometimes we reconceptualize a production or a play in a different way. It's done with Shakespeare all the time, and I think that can be very exciting. And I do think it creates for good conversation. But that's sort of what I think it means. But I think we should be careful about, being too obtuse about what we're saying.
I disagree with you. I think it's really important to differentiate between theme and concept. I don't think they're interchangeable terms. I think language is really important and it has a meaning. Let me tell you what I think theme is. and see if you disagree.
Okay.
I think theme is the meaning behind the story. It's the narrative. It's the topic that the writer is addressing. Concept are the origins of the story. It supports the narrative. It takes the story someplace. I think the difference between the word theme and the word concept is big. So I think, if that's how you want to work, that's fine. But I think you run the risk of redefining, the word hot dog into what you want it to be and saying, well, I'm going to call it a hot dog, but really what I'm talking about here is an apple, but an apple is too difficult to understand. You understand a hot dog, we've all had one. I think there's a difference there. Otherwise, one simply does the play the same way time after time after time, because you say, okay, well, this is what the writer wrote. This is what we're going to do. We're always going to put Macbeth in a bearskin rug. We're always going to put a sword in his hand because that's what Shakespeare did. I mean, why do people approach conceptual approaches to Shakespeare and take it out of time and place? Because they are looking at that theme. The theme doesn't change a whole lot, I don't think. What is the Shakespeare's easy. What is the theme of Romeo and Juliet? The theme, I don't think, changes. Your conceptual approach to it can change. The theme of Macbeth can change.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But you're suggesting that concept is a bad word.
No.
It's a word used by elitists. It's a word that we don't understand what it is, so we're going to simple it down for everybody. I think simpling it down or dumbing it down does a disservice to it. I think students and artists have to struggle through that rather than going, well, this is how I'm going to interpret the word. This is how. Otherwise, you get concept. I don't think when someone says, I'm going to do As You Like It and I'm going to put it in the antebellum South, that's not a concept. That's just a location. That's just a location.
I just want to say for any listeners who are actually listening to our show in a theater right now, you all must get up, go outside, spin around 3 times, curse, spit on the ground, and say, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Because we use the word Macbeth.
People are shouting and running and screaming around the planet right now in 123 countries.
So Stan has our next question.
All right. So William in the UP says, do you ever freestyle and not do a formal plot? Just sketch and make notes and go for it. Maybe a club or a one-off with the pre-hung house rig, or just work with the house hang and light over a series of actors' rehearsals. Yeah, sure.
All the time.
Yeah. It reminds me of a story of the lighting designer, the early lighting designer named Luc Lafortune, who lit Cirque. And he did a workshop once at LDI that I went to. And he said, here's how I do it. I sort of keep scratching out these ideas, and I point my finger and I tell people to hang lights here and hang them there. And then I play with it and then I move it around. They keep asking me, when's the light plot going to come? And he says, opening night.
Yeah, this is
There'll be a light plot. So it was a very informal process in responding to the work and a different way of working, and they get this fantastic art out of it. So yeah, and I've worked in dance theaters where there was a rep plot. I've worked in summer stock where there's a rep plot, and you make what you need out of what is there. That's not uncommon, and it might be difficult in some situations, but yeah, I think it's a way of work that you sort of have to just embrace. It would be difficult in a union situation where the clock is ticking. I think that was difficult for Luke in Las Vegas because it wasn't a common practice when they were doing those early Cirque shows. So.
It's a very European way of working. I remember when I first worked with Gunther Schneider-Simpson, he came in to light the show that I was assisting him on, and he basically pointed, we're waiting for a light plot, no light plot, no light plot. Just have the lights all ready to go. And he came in, says, let's put this light here, that light there, that light there. Okay, take it up, let's focus it. Nah, let's move that to here. And, yes, yep. There are very long crew calls. You can't get away with this in most places in the United States. But in Europe, you can. When you're in a theater for 6 weeks, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. Even when I worked in museums, we would go into these showcases and we would just sort of have okay, we're going to have so many fiber optics, we're going to have so many fixtures, and we're going to just hang them. And because they didn't always know what objects were going into which cases. And so we had enough there in place, and then we could spend 2 days on one showcase and keep experimenting to get the result that everybody was pleased with. So it is a way of work. It's not typical in this country, I don't think, too much, but.
Well, in a way it is. It's sort of like what you mentioned earlier about the rep plot. Now in rep plots we have moving lights, and it gives us a lot more flexibility. So I could almost do a plot and have it serve like 80% of the shows I do. And of course, most of them are movers,
right.
And there's side light and all the other stuff. But I know that I can get any color I want, and I could certainly get most angles I want. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times that even when you have a light plot, I certainly have lights, as Gilbert used to call them, gamoots, get me out of trouble lights. They're usually movers that will cover almost every angle I would need.
A couple of my alumni are doing these national tours of Broadway shows, and they came and did a masterclass, I think, last year. And the plot for, I forget what show it was now, Finding Neverland was the show that they were on. And they said basically everything it's like, now it's like wash spot across the trusses, and they can make whatever they need out of that. So it's sort of an efficiency and a response, so it doesn't have, exactly like you're saying, David. I think
that's what Gilbert used to do that too. He used to do a light
just all gamoots. They're all gamoots, right?
Exactly. I asked, I said, you don't have any channels. So this is back when we had a 60 channel controller, 60 dimmers in the theater. And I said, Gilbert, there are no channels here. He goes, I'll sign them later. I'll figure it out and sign it later. Okay, no problem. That's my job, is to keep track of all that.
You are listening to Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers, and Light Talk is sponsored by
a public service announcement from No More 10 out of 12s. Well, it's that time of the year once more when hordes of Girl Scouts single-handedly add hundreds of tons to the collective weight of Americans by selling Girl Scout cookies. Just like the bluebells of Texas, they pop up everywhere overnight, on every corner, in front of the grocery store, and sprinkled around the mall, proudly wearing their badge-covered vest, badges and patches, demonstrating skill and knowledge in a variety of life skills. As I was watching the Super Bowl halftime show last night, I thought, why not add some badges for basic rock and roll skills?
Right.
To demonstrate mastery in rock and roll, we would like to suggest 3 new badges. First, the Skull and Crossbone patch, awarded to would-be riggers who have dropped at least 3 cell phones in a 3-day load-in period. Second, the How About a T-Shirt Man patch, for being the first on the call to ask for a T-shirt prior to the truck doors opening at load-in. And third, the Mistaken Identity patch, for always missing your mark with the follow spot. Girl Scouts, we all have a place around the campfire. This has been a public service announcement from No More 10 out of 12s.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sound of those ducks tell us that once again it's time for our popular segment, Let's Talk About. So today, our Let's Talk About segment is our Super Bowl 54 halftime show review. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Super Bowl 54 happened last night. Yes, we are recording this the day after the Super Bowl on Monday, and so that we can still remember what the hell we saw. So we're going to talk about the show. We're going to talk about the lighting and the production design. First, I want to give little props out to Bruce Rogers of Tribe. They, of course, did the production design of the show, and Bob Barnhart of 22 Degrees, who did the lighting design. But let's start with the equipment list. Steve has it in front of him, and let's just run down the equipment, then we'll talk a little bit about it.
Sure. Let me say I'm always a sucker for fireworks, so you cannot have enough fireworks. So is Tribe listening? More fireworks.
More?
The lighting equipment, I mean, my goodness, how many trucks showed up? They had 84 Verilight 2600 profiles, 60 Verilight 4,000 beam wash, 212 PRG Icon Edge, 113 Ayrtron Perseos, 60 Clay Packy. Oh God, there's that Greek word again. What's the correct pronunciation?
Xtylos.
Great, there we go. Xtylos. They had 60 of those. 12 Clay Packy Sharpies. Thank God, a word I can pronounce.
Hey, Sharpies, great name.
12 GLP Impression X4 bar 20s with diffusion. 4
Love
GLP Impression X4 bar 10s with diffuser.
Love them.
24 GLP Exobeam 10s.
Love them.
80 GLP KNV cubes. 28 GLP KNV DOTs. 99 Martin VDO Dotron. 3 PRG V626 consoles, 48 TMB Solaris Flare, 8 Brightbox, 4 Brightbox, that's the 1.6 long throw and the medium throw, 12 real EFX diffusers, the DF50s, 12 of the fans that go with them, an MA console, Grand MA2, the PixMob. This is David's favorite part of the show.
I love this. I want one.
They had... The list here says PixMob, recycled X2 wristbands, 70,000 for the crowd.
Yeah, they were great.
11,000 fans on the field, and 3,200 to light the pods. So they had a mess of lights. So you can see all this at our Facebook posting, and of course you can also see it at the live design posting.
Yeah, thank you, Live Design, for publishing that right after the show.
Yeah, moments after the show.
It was fantastic.
Right. Timed well, very well timed, Ellen.
Thanks, Ellen. Time for our show, which is what we need. So Bruce Rogers and his colleagues at Tribe, they've designed about how many Super Bowl shows?
22. I looked it up.
22.
Yeah.
Well, you've also got to throw a bone out there to the 3 lighting directors, David Grill, Pete Radich, I think, Radicee, and Jason Rudolph. So it was and the lighting director, Patrick Brazil. So I mean, there was a huge.
That's a huge team.
Let me throw out one more name. My old friend Matt Shinseko is the lead technician for PRG, who always posts his pictures from various angles, like catwalks above the crowd on his Facebook page, which I love seeing. And yeah, he didn't post as much this time. I think he's sort of restricted by different types of security issues. But he was my master electrician when I was a freelancer back in the day. It's great to see.
So what do you guys think? How was the show?
I have to say, I thought Shakira's performance absolutely blew away J.Lo. I thought her performance was solid. The whole thing flowed really well. The different moments segued together. I thought the costumes looked good. The lighting was gorgeous for Shakira. Yeah. So I found it really great halftime performance. I liked it a lot. I thought the choreography was good, but it was strange camera angles.
Very strange.
I'm going to blame that on the director, not on her.
I just want to say, if I could, I thought the lighting was really stunning. I thought it was really much better than last year. It was beautiful. It coordinated color choices, really beautiful cues, and it's like they really planned it. Like, I know they don't have a lot of time to put that in the stadium, but I thought that was really great.
The Xtyloses really show.
Oh, you figured out how to say it, David. Very good.
They created that amazing thatched pattern, the cross-beam pattern at the end during J.Lo's part. That was beautiful.
And when they changed color, it was really beautiful.
The Ayrtron Perseos, they were actually buried in the floor on the runway upstage center. They were really cool at the top of the show. And you know what I really liked about the show? Bruce and his colleagues actually developed 2 distinctive design concepts and styles for each performer. Shakira was super high energy. She used a lot of that classic Latin dancing and, some of the classic Latin music more in the Cuban vein, which I missed. I thought this was going to all be about, Cuban music, Latin music in Miami. And there were only 2 parts that I really were able to identify it. However, there's new musical forms in Miami, more like a Latin type of rap. And I don't know about the spacesuit guy who's the rapper who does the Latin rap. That was really weird. That was like my least favorite costume in the show. And also in the projections on the floor, very bold graphics, very big graphics like large flowers, different colors shifting through in and out. Very, very exciting. Whereas J.Lo had a totally different feel to it. Yes, they used a lot of the Xtyloses, doing that incredible hatched wall at the end. And they had that great nightclub scene where they used the GLP impressions as VTSs, where they had these beautiful color chases. And there was also a section where they all went clear, quite striking. in their floor graphics on the projections, they had this amazing thing where they would actually use this forced perspective, and the dancing on top of it, the choreography, it actually looked like the floor sunk into the stadium about 50 feet, and you had all these dancers on different levels going down. Again, it was an optical illusion because it was forced perspective, but it was really quite elegant and beautifully done. Then that moment where they had all the kids in the cages, again, subtle, beautiful, and very powerful. And at the very end, when Shakira joined J.Lo and they did that finale, that was really, really special. Very powerful, very energetic. And what a way to end a show.
One of the things that really struck me was the coordinated and simple, in a good way, use of color coordination with the costumes, the beautiful, simple circular stage, the making really clear and distinct choices, the great chroma. I did watch it on a 5K. My iMac is a 5K pixel screen. It was gorgeous. Every look was beautiful. I really enjoyed the helicopter shots or blimp shots from above with what they were doing on the roof. To Steve's point about the fireworks, coordinating fireworks, lighting palette, costumes, scenic elements. There was just a real cohesiveness to that design that I thought, really showed time, thoughtfulness, and coordination. And I think that was really, really powerful. And the technology, of course, showcasing that. But if I could find one word for the whole thing, that was tasteful. It was tasteful in every way, design-wise.
And I loved the political nature of the show. From everything from the empowerment of women to those kids in those cages. They were like in white outfits, and it reminded us of that horrible moment in our history when we locked those children up at the border. Really, really horrible. Bravo to these women for taking such a stand and being so brave. So all kidding aside about James Taylor, what challenges does Bruce and his team have for next year?
How do you top yourself? I mean, the Super Bowls, they're great, but they're all starting to look the same to me. And you are so restricted in what you can do. You're restricted about, 8 pieces of stage. You're restricted where the cameras go. You only have so much time. You've got to make it look good on camera, and it looked fantastic on camera. I don't quite know where they're going to go. I don't know if they have hit the mark and they can't push it any further. So now it's up to the choreographer, it's up to the people staging to try to do something that Madonna didn't do last year or do something the Rolling Stones didn't do a few years earlier. It's becoming quite a challenge, I think, for these big spectacle shows, whether it's the halftime show or it's the opening ceremony for the Olympics. It's just, what can we do? That's just raises the mark a bit.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, though, if you just stick to good design, because if you think about it, the technology, other than those Xtyrons, what are they called again, Stan?
You said it, Xtylos.
Xtylos. Yeah, there really isn't a lot of really super brand new technology there.
But it's used beautifully.
Last year.
It's used beautifully.
Of course, and that's my point. My point is the way Bob topped himself from last year, in my opinion, is that this is a much better design, and it was because also the content was better.
Yes.
He had a much better show.
Yeah.
And last year's show was so disjointed. This show was not. Yes, they had the fake crowd surfing. Yes, they had the string section on stage right. Yes, you throw all the spaghetti against the wall, but this was done beautifully, and it was done appropriately. And that's why the show worked. And you had two great performers out there. So Bob, he did great work because it was to the music and to the show. He supported it.
Absolutely.
So our hats are off to the entire Tribe team. I just think it was a beautiful show. And and they can retire 7 times on the fees they make on these shows, but they deserve it because it is great.
It's a Herculean effort, absolutely.
And also it inspires people to enter our business. They see a show like that, they say, I want to learn how to do this. I want to learn how to paint the air with these amazing technological lights,
Sure.
So Steve has our final question.
Roxanne in Utah writes, how do you explain to the followspot operator what do you want he or she to do? Well, this is pretty easy. If you're working with a union crew, they're going to understand what you want them to do. But you have to understand how to ask for it correctly. So here's a half a dozen kind of things that follow spot operators are guided by when you want a certain quality of light or size of light on stage. The first would be a headshot. And you're master electrician, and you can sit down if you're using a student crew and walk them through this. A headshot, that's the top of the head to the top of the shoulders. Head and shoulders, okay. Now we're going to open that headshot up to include their chest. A waist shot, head to waist, down to around the belt line. Half body, head to thigh. Three-quarter body, head to just below the knees. And a full body, so head to toe. And then the one that gets you out of trouble all the time is that group shot. Just get everybody in the shot. So a group shot is anything that's more than one person in it, a full body. So those are kind of terms they're listening for as you're directing what you want the beam of light to look like. And, of course, you're giving color numbers to them. You're asking them to douse in or out. But those are the things they're listening for.
And make sure you write it all down in a very easy-to-understand follow-spot cue sheet, and have your assistant or you update it regularly and hand it to them.
You know, if you're doing a concert show, then maybe your follow spots are assigned to the same target all night long. I try to do that. So the bass follow spot is always hitting the bass. I do the same thing in dance. I'll try to have a boy follow spot, girl follow spot. And I tell them where to pick things up. You know, I say I want you to begin your pickup at quarter line or eighth line. I don't want it on the legs. Don't follow them off to the bathroom. Let's hit them at quarter line or hit them at eighth line. If you do that consistently, it makes it very easy. They know where their ins and outs are.
Yeah, and I do the same thing with musicals and operas, is that if I have a follow spot on Tosca, spot one, that spot will be always on Tosca. I would split the two to Tosca and one on Cavaradossi. Sometimes you have to do it, right? But you try to stay as consistent as possible, and that makes their lives a lot easier. So, guys, that Hammond organ in the background tells us that, once again, you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Live Design Online, and just about every other podcast hosting site out there. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for future guests, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk fun.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you should choose to litigate, the law firm of Fleck, Flock, Flair, and Glare and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and the Lone Star State.
And be sure to tune in next week when we interview lighting designer and overall great guy, Clifton Taylor.
All that and a new sponsor.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
We'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
So long, everybody.
Toodles.